So we are going to go over our first project today, which is the measurement project. So like I said, we need a piece of notebook paper or a piece of computer paper. All right, so where it's talking about kind of the intro to this measurement section is it's in history when we entered the age of exploration and people started really widely traveling more than they had before. We start to see distances, some confusion in distances, and because we didn't have a certain way that the people were measuring. So everybody was measuring a little bit differently. Nobody was using the same units, and so it was a little bit confusing as far as if you were explaining to somebody where you traveled. And so here we can see different routes of some different explorers. Oops, we have one more. We're going to pause real quick. Okay, so traveling became a lot more frequent. This is when we see the beginning of trade. And so this is when we really started to notice, because we are interacting with people from far away, which is becoming a lot more common, that we need to find some kind of consistent way of measuring, that everybody uses the same thing so that we're all on the same page. So for weight, there were a couple of the different measurements were grains. How they would measure is 7,000 grains, which is about a pound. So they would measure in how many grains something weighed. Or a scruple was like, oops, this is covering this up. I don't know if I can move it. I don't think I can move the picture. So those are a couple of the different units that they use to measure weight. For length, the Egyptian cubit was your elbow to your tips of your fingers. For Greece, the measurement they used was a finger. And then in the 13th century in England, they used your feet and your hands. And we can see in this picture here how that might be a problem, because if we're measuring in feet, we know people's feet vary a lot. So, or some people would do like the length of a pace or how many hands, but we know these aren't great because all of these things vary from person to person. So what I would like you to do is we're going to use the ancient Greek measurement of your fingers. So we're going to do the width of your finger, and I want you to tell me how many fingers long your paper is. So I'll give you a few minutes. So we're going to do the length, the long side of the paper, and try to measure how many fingers if you're doing the width of your finger. Okay, so Isabella, you said yours was 3 1/4. Chris, what did you get? 0.13. How are you guys coming up with these fractions or these decimals? So if I did length of my finger, like from the knuckle closest to my hand to the tip of my finger, for how long my paper is, I got 4. So we can see this is quite a bit of discrepancy. And so even though we're all holding a piece of paper in front of us, which we know are all the same length, we're coming up with completely different numbers. So how did the ancient Egyptians make measurements standard? And so I have a video. I'm going to paste the link in the chat box. Oops, maybe. Okay. So here's the link. So I want you to go ahead and watch the video. It's 5 minutes long, and then let me know once you're finished watching it. Okay, so we could see from the video a little bit of kind of what I was talking about, how we had all these different measurements, and not only were they different between everybody, but also just between different cultures, they use different things. So we needed something that was more consistent. So we have the two different measuring systems today, the US system, which is the feet and the inches and the yards and the miles, and then we have the metric system, which is used by pretty much everyone except for the US. And in science, the metric system is what we use because it's like nice and easy to convert because we just have to move the decimal place. So we said US is like miles, pounds, gallons, and in metrics we use meters, liters, grams, and everything is um, a multiple of 10. So like meters to kilometers is 1,000, or meters, centimeters in a meter is 100. So they're all nice round numbers, so we can just move our decimal place. So for the project that you guys are doing, the first few questions are just a little bit about what you think is interesting and stuff. But then when we get into the measurement, you pick an object for your standard of measurement. So if we did pick the width of our finger, so that's not how long our finger is, but the width, then we'd want to describe what it is that we're using. So you'd say, the width of your pointer finger. And then you're going to be measuring things with that. So if I did my piece of paper, so now use the width of your finger, not the length, and go ahead and measure how long your paper is and tell me how many finger widths you get. Okay? Okay, so 17, 15. So whenever I did mine, I got 19. So, like in our lab, so we would describe here the object that we use. So if we use our finger, or if you use a toothpick or whatever, you're going to describe what it is. And then, like if I was using my finger, I'd want to say specifically like where I'm using it. Like I'm using the width of my finger across my middle knuckle on my pointer finger. And then we're going to measure 3 different objects. So for like our piece of paper, for object 1, we'd say the long side of a piece of, printer paper. And the measurement is that I got 19 finger widths. Does that make sense? All right. So what household object did you guys decide to use for your standard of measurement? Or have we gotten to that point yet? Not yet? So what would be some good things, do you think, to use for your standard of measurement? What are some kind of common objects that people know what they are? A spoon, good. So maybe you could do the length of a spoon, or you could do the width of a spoon. You'd want to describe what kind of spoon you're using. If you're using like a soup spoon, or if you're using a little teaspoon. So yeah, we want to use something that's common. So we don't want to use like the width of my teddy bear, because maybe not every, that'd be hard to describe, to get the size of your teddy bear to describe. So like a toothpick is good. A spoon would be good. Be a straw. Things that are kind of typically the same size. All right. So that's all that I have for you today. Does anybody have any questions?